We just finished a day of game playing, concluding with all this. Zombicide
Even more.
and expansions. And
One of them's
and one of my favorite games of all time.
This is
Cthulhu Death May Die.
Just kidding.
And Doolin loves Zombicide and prefers it to Cthulhu, at least with everything involved. And I had never played it. This was your favorite game of all time last year when we did our top 20 games of all time.
It is.
And mine was Death May Die at the time, I think.
Yeah.
Neither of us at that point had played each other's. You've played and very much enjoyed Death May Die, though still prefer this. Now that I've played them both, we wanted to do a quick run through, talk about some brief comparisons and differences, and then ultimately, at the end of the video, give my score or rundown of what I prefer and why.
I am on the edge of my seat because Max finished this without talking at all about how he felt about it.
I've not said a word to Doolin.
And he was just like, let's record something. And I was just like, okay.
And if you hear kids, sorry, but I have kids.
He does.
And we've been playing throughout the day, so thank you to Danielle for watching the girls as we've been able to play some games and get through a little bit of a backlog. But they are upstairs still playing right now, so I'm going to finish this up, and we're going to go hang out with them and get them to bed. But do you have any specific questions for me?
Okay, so let's compare the people. What do you think of the people and like their leveling up system in both games? What do you think of both?
And before we even start talking about anything, let's clarify that I've played Death May Die 12 times. I've played this once.
That's true.
So I may say something that could be wildly wrong, and you can obviously jump in and correct me. And these are just strictly first impressions. I would like to, I'll go ahead and say now, I'd like to play this more to kind of to feel out and see what I actually get to come to after a dozen plays on this as well. But first impressions wise, I think that the characters are fine. I definitely don't find as much distinct differences and maybe it's strictly the flavor, because in Cthulhu Death May Die, each person has 3 abilities that are really moving along tracks.
Yes.
And only one of them is distinctly unique to themselves.
That's true.
The other 2 are shared within other people. But just by the character art and like the little backstory, I think that it, the single individual ability that they share with no one else is far more like important. The specializing in this game, and it has it in Death May Die, but I want to say they're flip-flopped. The specializing in Death May Die is about the character that you choose, and the items that you receive bolster that. In this game, the specialization to me felt more item-driven.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that the characters still had differences, just like the items create differences in Death May Die, but that the items made all the world a difference. I mean, my character was a shell of who he was the turn before he found the Dwarven Axe to the turn after he found the Dwarven Axe. Typically in Death May Die, the items are roll 2 extra dice.
Yeah.
Which is great, but it's not character changing. Your abilities are character changing.
It's true.
In Zombicide, when I felt like I got the Lava Burst, I mean, literally, the 2 vault items that I got, the Lava Burst and the Dwarven Axe, combined with the Power Wave and the Heavy Dagger and blah, 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 the combinations that I had were created because of the item that I got.
Yeah.
And I think in Death May Die, they're usually more centered around the abilities, and the items are just an extra die here or there, or blah, blah, blah. And here it's the opposite. The characters give you an extra thing here or there, and the items give you the wham, the real power.
I agree with that. I think that especially the vault weapons, because the vault, and it's like this special thing that you have to actually really work for. You don't even have to go do. So like doing it though, I think made us win. I think we were on the verge of death, and we found them, and
then it was just roll a ton of dice and have a blast. And I'll admit, I mean, not that I'm admitting things. There's no wrong or right answer to which one you prefer, and I'm not disclosing that just yet. But like the vault is fun. Like I love that. Like just as someone who's played video games his whole life, who if Death May Die had like here's this other thing that you can go do that is not required at all to win, but will definitely help. Like you're going to improve, but you're going to waste turns doing so. It's just that amount of stress and like push your luck. Like, do I want that? And with me, it's always going to be yes. But like I enjoyed that I was like, okay, let's not focus on the main thing. Let's go get this and see how much it can help us. I really liked that aspect of the vault. I think that the same thing with the zombies, and not that that's a downside either, is there are far more plastic, far more zombies in this game than there are in Death May Die.
1000%.
In Death May Die, each thing, I mean, it's mostly just cultists, but like it all kind of ties in. Like they're there because they're the cultists. There's just zombies just thrown at you.
Yeah,
and it doesn't necessarily work from a like story element because there's no real rhyme nor reason why this zombie's here and why this zombie's there.
Yeah.
But from a gameplay element, I mean, it is that horde-based Left 4 Dead kind of experience where stuff's just spawning. Like, stuff is just coming at you.
And the more you go, the better you get.
But the more zombies come. Right.
Yeah, you touched on something earlier that I think I agree with more than anything.
I'm just talking a lot, so if you go back.
You said that this feels like a video game at times, and especially with the vault, especially with, I mean, you just mentioned Left 4 Dead. The difference, I think, for me between Cthulhu Death May Die, and honestly, there have been times where I would have preferred to play Cthulhu Death May Die on a night rather than Zombicide because of what you're touching on, which is that there's just more flavor, there's more story, there's more. The boss monsters feel scarier, way scarier than Cthulhu Death May Die, just from the certain fact that you have to hit them so often. Like, I think they tried to do that with this, and there are more dragons that I don't have. Sorry, we had them off camera, but there's
this boy, the one that fell on Doolin's head in this clip right here.
No, it wasn't. Actually.
Oh, dang it.
Different dragon.
Then we won't play that clip. You'll have to find it yourself.
That would hurt a lot, but worse.
Yeah, this is a heavier one, probably.
But the boss monsters are really just there to
distract you, maybe.
Yeah, they're cool, but it's like a video game. I mean, like they hop in, you deal with them, and then they're still horde. Like it's just keep going. Whereas I don't know, with Cthulhu Death May Die, it's more centered around
the boss is the reason you're there. I mean, in this game, the boss is an element to distract you and disrupt you from your goal, which is to escape.
You, which is also
right. And in Death May Die, like the boss is your goal. Like once the boss is dead, you win. Like you don't have to do anything else. The boss is dead, you win. It's very different in how that feels, depending on which one you prefer. It just depends on how you like to play. But I mean, I think they're very different in the way that they work throughout the game. Obviously, one is far less important, but there were like mini bosses too, which there are in Death May Die, but they were spawning a little more in this. But I think that might just be a luck-based thing based off the Mythos cards in Death May Die and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, the bosses are totally different. The goalposts are so changed depending on the game, where each scenario has a very specific thing you want to do, and in this, it's just get here, get the keys, get out. The bosses are there to disrupt you.
And I think that the biggest thing that Zombicide that gets me on is, for one, it's just a fun like group activity where like Cthulhu Death May Die is a bunch of different things you got to do, and that's fun. But if you just want to run around a map with your friends and just lay waste to zombies, and sometimes you're going to have scary moments, especially at the beginning when you feel real weak and squishy. Like you're going to be like throwing things around. You're like, man, this sword is just a little bit better than this sword. But then you find that one weapon and you pull it out and you're like, guys, let me at him. And you go up and you start swiping everything and your friends are like, yes! Like it's just this swingy, fun game. And I've heard Board Game Co. talk so much about this. He loves this. Alex talks about this so much. He loves the upgraded feel of the game. Yep. That as you go on, you're going to get more actions. You're going to get more dice. You're going to get better weapons. And by the end of the game, you no longer feel like this is impossible. There's a moment that in this game, everything switches and you're like, we're going to do this. And it's funny listening to Max, because towards the beginning, he was just like, I don't know how this is going to happen. We were looking really bad. I mean, and then over here, like things would spawn like 8 or 9 of them. He's like,
I got it.
I'll walk in there.
I got it.
Let me go.
I mean, I was blowing up at the end. Like,
you were. You got this perfect combination of things specifically for, what's his name here? Who is it?
Cabral and Megan.
Man,
they were both laying waste to a dozen at a time enemies. I mean, yeah, one of the things that I really like about Death May Die, and I'm not I'm not saying I prefer the item system to Death May Die because I genuinely don't know. I like the number of items in this game and that you are allowed to search as an action.
We didn't even go through
I know, right? That's what I'm saying.
Which is crazy.
And you're allowed to search as an action, which means you're going to cycle them more.
Yeah.
In Death May Die, you specifically have to be in a safe space after the Mythos cards have been drawn. So, I mean, oftentimes you'll play a game of Death May Die and draw an item or two.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not oftentimes, I should say, but there are chances that you play Death May Die and you only get an item or two by the end of the game.
I think that they're more ability driven. Like Cthulhu Death May Die, I don't remember ever caring about weapons as much.
Oh, see, I don't agree in that standpoint.
I've always died, though. So
I'll say that the amount of items that are going to change the game, and again, that's what I was saying, it's the characters in Death May Die to items in here, is definitely more few and far between. But like in Death May Die, playing Elizabeth, you want a pistol. I mean, that's 2 extra green die on your turn that you can roll when fighting an adjacent or out of adjacency, whatever. But the items in Death May Die are more limited, which is a negative. But they're all specific to the scenario that you're playing, which is a positive.
Yeah.
The investigation cards are all in the scenario box. If I'm playing scenario 3, I have these 18 investigation cards or whatever those are. So they have not only items, but companions or curse effects or things like that. I like that the flavor is tied into each individual scenario you're playing, and I like that it's a little more meaningful to get an item, and that you're less likely to get like fluff that doesn't mean anything necessarily. But I definitely like searching for items as someone who likes things, likes items, likes progressing. Like I'm always about, if a game just allows me to search for stuff, like I want to see what's in that deck. Like I want to find out.
Yeah.
So I think that it works really well, and I don't think one way is better than the other. But I think that the way the item fits, the way that the items work in Death May Die works for Death May Die, and the way that the items work in Zombicide works for Zombicide. I mean, it's not one way is better, but they are each distinctly different to the game that they're playing in.
All right. So, I'm hearing a lot. I'm hearing a lot of, this might not be good, or this, I don't want to say one way or the other.
I'm a fence sitter so far. Is that what you're talking about?
Let's start getting into the nitty gritty. What do you like more about, let's start with Zombicide, because it's already out here. What do you prefer about Zombicide to Cthulhu Death May Die?
And I want to say, too, before we get too into this, that I am a person who really likes to think over my thoughts. And we're jumping into this minutes after the game has been over. So I would like to revisit this topic in the future after having played them both multiple times again, then really kind of comparing it. I don't want to get into too big of like detail-oriented conversations because I'm only coming off of first impressions, and I just came off of it. I'll think about this game tonight and try and digest a little more. But with that being said, I mean, the first thing that I've already talked about, but I just really freaking like is the vault. I mean,
the vault.
I've mentioned that already, but that's just so much fun. Like that, like I said, if Death May Die had a extra objective that you could go do, and maybe it does. I've played Death May Die 12 times, and I've only played the first four scenarios. But if there was some kind of extra objective that takes your mind off of the real goal, but has a reward, a little gold at the end of the tunnel. Like, I like those things that pull me away from the objective that needs to be completed towards an objective that I want to complete.
You would really like. There's an extra thing that I haven't thrown into this mix because I was just like, it's too much, doesn't need to be there. It's a thing called the VIPs, which are in every rendition of Zombicide that I've seen, but they're essentially like... They're special looking base zombies, and they don't do anything more than a base zombie, but they'll be dressed in like royal clothes, or they'll be dressed as jesters and like all that stuff. And there's 5 different types, and there's 25 zombies. And if you kill one of each kind, you exchange that for a special weapon.
Oh, yeah.
For a vault weapon. And I think that there are extra vault weapons in that pack.
Yeah, something like that would be sick.
Yeah. And you just collect them over time. You're like, I need to get to that zombie way over there, and
I love
collect that one.
I love that.
And stuff like that I think is neat that they want to throw in. And I know that is going to be in the future ones. Like, I'm really looking forward to Undead or Alive, which I backed all of. I think... Never mind. I don't want to get something else. But I really like when they have extra stuff like that isn't found in the base game that you can throw into the game that makes it interesting and fun.
I also just really like and this is a positive and a negative, and I'm not saying it's better or worse. And I know you just told me to stop doing that. But like I do really like just the amount of variability in the zombies, the amount of plastic.
Yeah.
the negatives being that they're not as tied to the scenario that's happening. They're just kind of there. And also another negative, or very much a positive to some of you watching, but for me, God, that's a lot of stuff to paint. Mm-hmm. And like, I like to paint, but I don't have the time to it. Like this game, Death May Die has vastly a smaller amount of plastic than this game does, and I'm still like working my way through that, and not even remotely. I've painted the cultists. Like, God, I'm so slow.
Look
at
how much we didn't even throw on the map, Max.
I know. Yep. Like, so the amount of plastic is both a good and bad thing. I like the different zombies. These take 2 damage. These take 3 damage and explode. Like, I do really like that. Whereas in Death May Die, it's very much cultists and like 2 normally different
special
monsters,
guys,
2 special monsters, and then the boss. So you're usually not dealing with a ton of variability from the monster side, which definitely gives a bit of flavor and a bit of an advantage to this. But also, speaking on the same topic of monsters, I definitely felt that, I don't know how to say this well. I'm not sure exactly how to describe this, but I like the monsters in Death May Die more because I think that it's both good and bad, the whole 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage thing. I think this game would be a nightmare if each thing had very specific things that they did. Yeah. It would be it would be way too much. So I understand, and I'm glad that they went with what they went with, but I do think that it's like, just that pretty much everything acts the same. It's just how many spaces they can move, or, well, I shouldn't say pretty much, because there's differences.
You're right.
But the vast majority of them are, these guys can move 3 spaces, these guys can move 2 spaces, these guys can move 1, these guys have 1 extra health, so they take 1 extra damage. But like, there's just not a lot of distinct differences between the zombies.
100%.
And there are when it comes to these guys, and again, that's more than even Death May Die has, but the differences aren't as notable.
Definitely.
In this game compared to Death May Die, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. I think that the differences in why you might want to play one over the other is, again, the whole focus on this is you're going to be overwhelmed.
Yes.
And by the end of the game, I think the hope is you feel more powerful than any of the zombies on the field, but they're going to be spilling in by 7s, 8s, sometimes like 6 5s, and they're like super powerful zombies that will be throwing at you multiple times around. And the hope is you can just hopefully get to the exit by then.
Yeah.
But in Cthulhu Death May Die, I definitely think that the monsters are made to feel a lot scarier.
They are, for sure.
And in this case,
they hit a lot harder.
Way harder.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think if I want to play something that I feel a lot more worried, or like that sense of horror, this is not the game for you. This is way more an action game, and that's it for the most part. Whereas Cthulhu Death May Die, like, there's a lot more of that flavor that the boss monster is going to make you even more worried, and like even just the addition of a second health bar of madness. Yeah, that's what I'd like to jump in if you'll allow me there. Because something I wanted to talk about before we got off topic is that I do feel like in Death May Die, one advantage or disadvantage, depending on how you're going to play it. I know. I don't know how else to talk about this game. You don't want to play your hand too much. I don't, but they are also significantly different, and you'll see that in my conclusion as well. Mm-hmm. But I never felt scared of anything other than the zombies in this game. Mm-hmm. And even still, at the end, like you said, it's just a numbers game. Like, I still wasn't scared. At the end, I was like, I can take on anything and everything. Like, we're gonna be fine. These people are blowing stuff up. But I never felt scared of much. Mm-hmm. In Death May Die, not only are the monsters scary, but you also have the end of round effects that happen with, like, the Mythos cards. Mm-hmm. So if you're playing Haster, you can get more yellow sign tokens, which means that they're rolling more dice against you. Yeah. If you're playing Cthulhu, each turn you can just get more insane, and then you can die from insanity. Yeah. Your insanity triggers can also be negative things, or there's just a lot more in the environment of Death May Die to consider as dangerous and scary. Whereas in Zombicide, it's really just the zombies, and even still, it's really just the number of zombies that is scary. Mm-hmm. Remy's drinking now too, but yeah, it's just one of those things that
They really aren't. I mean, they are similar, but they're not. There's just so many distinct differences.
For sure.
Anything else that you want to talk just specifically about?
I think, okay, one thing that matters to you guys, especially if you're trying to decide between the two games, is how much you get from one box. Cthulhu Death May Die has a lot. If I were to tell you, and this is huge for me because I prefer Zombicide, if I were to tell you if you could only buy one, definitely only buy Cthulhu Death May Die. There's way more in the base Cthulhu Death May Die box than there is in the base Zombicide box.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to look into and talk about too, because as someone who owns Death May Die but does not own Zombicide, but may be interested in acquiring it, I'm worried that I'll end up having to spend, not that I didn't also spend a couple $100 on Death May Die, but I'm worried that I will have to spend a couple $100 on Zombicide as well.
I legitimately believe to get it to a good level where you have a good variety of zombies to throw at a person, and there's a lot of variability in the players already. I think out of the first box that's fine, but like if you want a boss monster or if you want something like that, you're gonna have to spend an extra 40, 50, even maybe $100 on top of getting the base game, which is already like $70 to $100 depending on where you buy it, to get this game really where you want it.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. I'm lucky enough that when I first got this game, it was a gift, and I fell in love with it right off the bat. Got a bit of birthday money because my birthday and Christmas are like right there, and I got it a long time ago. I started to just collect all of the expansion. I got them a little bit at a time, even to the point where this year I was getting a few. And the game is amazing now, but it's nowhere near as good with just the base game, unfortunately. And at this point, I honestly feel like the best way to get into Zombicide is to get one of the new Kickstarters. Yeah. And to just go in, because like they throw in so much as unlockables, even if you just get the base game on Kickstarter. And this game, I spent so much money collecting everything, whereas if I had just gotten on the Kickstarter at the beginning, I probably would have not spent half the money that I did collecting all of it.
And it's something to jump in on what you were saying, and I hadn't really thought about this, which is why I'm mentioning it. You might not care, but there's not a ton of stuff in the core box of Death May Die.
Maybe I'm
No. I think you're right. No, okay. I think you're right, but it's a specific reason that you're right. Okay. There's not a ton of plastic and whatnot in Death May Die. But because each scenario is catered, you're not using everything. Yeah. So the scenarios require so much less in Death May Die because you've got the scenario-specific stuff. You're using the cultists and everyone, pretty much, and you're using a few different monsters. Yeah. And then the next time, it's the scenario that's going to change things up, and you're going to have these cultists instead, or these deep ones that do something a little different. Like, you're really only adding in a little bit from the actual plastic into the game on each scenario. It's the scenario box that has the specific rules and things like that that makes it so wildly different. So I think you're right in that Death May Die is a lot more content in the single box, the core campaign. But it's not from a numbers game as far as plastic or number of cards or anything. It's just how they utilize that content. Yeah. Because Death May Die is a much more tight game. It's not as open and as customizable, and you could toss all these cards in. If you're playing a scenario, you're playing that scenario. Yeah.
And it tells you everything you need.
Right. So that's why it's able to utilize its content more to get more bang for your buck out of it. Whereas from a strictly miniatures and cards game, I have no idea which is actually the better one, but like it doesn't come with a ton. It just utilizes that content in a very specific way to make it longer lasting, I guess. I don't know, that's one thing. But we'll get into it. What you're all here for, I guess, and then we'll start talking about why is with
I've not glued the
the wings. The dragon.
He comes in 3 pieces, and I've still never glued him together.
And if I had to pick one, I would probably still pick Death May Die. Okay. But having played them, I do feel that they are significantly different. If you're on, a hardcore budget, you probably shouldn't buy them both because they're similar enough to give you a good experience. But if this is one of your favorite types of games, And for me, it is one of my favorite types of games. There's no reason why you couldn't have both and couldn't enjoy both.
For sure.
And I think we both
the
already
only reason I don't have Cthulhu Death May Die is because you have it. Yeah, 1000%. If you were to like move away or like you're like I don't really want to play Death May Die anymore and you're gonna sell it, I'm like I gotta have it. Yeah, I gotta get it.
I definitely feel that way having played it. Like I still will pull for Death May Die because I really like the horror aspect, but ultimately because of the scenarios. I mean, the scenarios are huge.
Absolutely.
And they give me a reason to do what I'm doing that changes up from game to game. Like I said, I haven't even played but the first 4, and I just played the 4th one on Saturday, and it was like last Saturday. It was like wildly different from the first 3. And I was like, oh, I really like the way they did this. Like this is really cool. The objective that we're having to do. So like those objectives are, in my opinion, why that's what gives me the leg up to Death May Die. But yeah, like you've said, if you're really just kind of like trying to have some fun and like plop down on a map, walk around, find some stuff, upgrade, I was rolling 7, not that you can't also do that in Death May Die, roll 7 dice, but like that's one thing that I was afraid of until 3/4 of the way through the game.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts about Death May Die and why I think that like Danielle loves Death May Die is because we love rolling a handful of dice. And until those vault weapons, I was not doing that. And you weren't doing that, especially on that one character.
Yeah.
It definitely felt a little worse until those vault weapons. In Death May Die, even just as you move up the insanity track, you're gaining a green die every so like by the time you're dead from insanity, you can have 3 extra die strictly from that. That's not counting any items and counting any skills or anything like that. So I was afraid that it wasn't going to hit that note. That Zombicide wasn't going to hit that roll a crap ton of dice notes for me. It eventually did. Now, whether that will come through in every single game I play,
I'll go ahead and say
you think so.
Especially if you've upgraded your character a lot,
right?
And there's a point in Zombicide where you're struggling to keep up with everyone else, and that can kind of stink. But I've never played a game where if we were working together well, we could get everybody there,
right?
And like even your character, if you didn't have the vault weapon, you would have eventually gotten Barbarian, which is like the swing through a big group of zombies type of thing. And yeah, those moments. Honestly, I wish that you'd picked it just for this last little bit. Where
because I could have rolled.
I have the picture. He had like 20 zombies. Yeah. You could have rolled 20 dice.
Yeah, that would have been nutty.
And it would have been insane.
That would have been nutty. Good point.
Yeah, it's a fun time with the dice for sure.
I like I said, still prefer Death May Die, but like I really did like this. Like I don't want you to just think that I prefer Death May Die. It's easily the best.
I'm just glad you liked it.
Whatever.
I'm glad you had a good time.
I did.
I could tell Max was having a good time because there was a time where we clearly could have left. And Max was just like, no, I want to turn around. Like I was like, well, we should really get to the exit. No.
Let me blow up these 15 guys over here.
And that's one of my favorite things is introducing new people to this game because at first, they're like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this or not, and then by the end, every time I've played this game with somebody, they've always
how it was for me. Not that I wasn't having a good time, but I was like sitting there worried, like, man, I'm rolling 2 dice, like. There's a zombie on the board who we can't even kill right now. Like we don't have the items that we need to kill it. But that pushed us to search through the vault. So it's not necessarily a negative, but yeah, regardless. Now that I've played them both, I still really love Death May Die. But like I think I want Zombicide. Like I think I want to look into acquiring it, which I know is maybe scary.
Dude.
See, the problem is I'm not a Marvel fan. I know you're about to talk about that.
So many options.
I know.
You have so many options. If you like cowboy, maybe we can talk about
I'm not a cowboy guy though either.
Okay. Modern? Do you like modern stuff?
I don't know. So that's what I gotta look into.
Or honestly, you're starting to fall out of love of Nemesis.
Invader, maybe? No, I don't know.
Invader?
I still love
Nemesis too. There's a lot of choices, and that's the thing with Zombicide that I talking about which one I prefer.
But ultimately,
I've already said Zombicide.
Yeah.
But more and more, I'm falling more in love with Cthulhu Death May Die, and I give the leg up to them on so many things. The story, for one. And then
which is funny, though. Because there's not a lot of story.
I know, but like
it's strictly like the scenario,
the flavor text, like the feeling. It's
I'm with you.
It's more thematic to me. Not 100%. Not that I don't think this is thematic. It's just that's way more thematic to me. 100%. And
and I also really liked like the necromancer.
Oh yeah,
I want to talk about that too real quick. The necromancer like pops on the map, and instead of like trying to go kill you, they're trying to find the nearest exit. And if they do, you lose. Like that's just another objective that like pulls you out of focus. And I really like those things that like you just have to balance. Like this needs to get done before this amount of time, and this is the main objective, which if we don't do, we lose. But I also want this. Like I just really like when games give you those options.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it relies on like certain zombie spawning or the certain vault to be included.
Yes.
Because those things are always present in Death May Die in the form of the main objective.
Yeah.
In Death May Die, I wish there were secondary objectives. In this, I wish there were objectives at all, really, except for the key thing. I mean, I just think that would be interesting. Go here with 2 people, kill a zombie on this spot to make its blood fall into the summoning stone, summon the great guy, like stuff like that would be so unique and interesting to me. And that's where Death May Die hits those specific notes that causes that game to sing for me.
You were talking about everything that I wish that and here's the thing. This is the second version that they came out with. I know that they've added stuff like that already. I know that the new like modern Zombicide has added some fun like campaigny like different scenarios.
Yeah, I was gonna say a campaign would be fun too.
Then Undead and Alive, I know for a fact, has even created like this legacy campaign that you can add into the game, and like there's going to be a lot more stuff like what you're saying in the game itself. And so I honestly hope, part of me when I first saw just to bring it up, the Marvel Zombicide was going to happen. We have no idea what it's going to be like.
Nope.
It's now I think 2 days away from like when they really announce it.
22nd is when it comes announced.
Man. So it might you guys might know before we do, but
we may also not know much on 22nd. It could be a straight announcement, and then here's the campaign on the 10th of December, and then we'll learn. Because typically, a lot of stuff's hidden in CMON campaigns until the stretch goals happen.
It's true. My hope is that they've learned from their past, not mistakes, because I think those games were good, but they've learned how to make a really great game and a really solid, like mechanically solid game, and that they can apply that to where they don't really have to think about like the maps and the zombies themselves, but think about, okay, what can I add to where like Captain America, he's going to run in and he needs to find his shield somewhere, and it's lodged in this like it's like somewhere, and you got to go find it, or something to where like story is more of a focus. Not that Zombicide needs that, but I would love to see it. I would love to see it become more like Cthulhu Death May Die, and maybe the differences become less and less to the point where you don't even have to have a new Cthulhu Death May Die, because Marvel Zombicide is going to be Cthulhu Death May Die and Zombicide together with Marvel theme, and then you're talking about my wishes.
All things considered, we both very much like both games.
For sure.
We both also have our preferences.
Both in my top 20.
Yeah, I think we both, I'd have to play this a lot more before I'd give it that hump, but like, it was very good, and I had a lot of fun with it. And there are many things that I wish were included in Death May Die because of this, and vice versa. And I'm excited to try it out. Although I still prefer Death May Die, and although he still prefers Zombicide, I think we both have a ton of fun and respect for the other.
Absolutely. And
think that if this is your type of game and money is not a concern, both of them are games that you should try and own and play because they're great.
Fantastic.
I want to talk about this more, having played it more. But we're going to leave it at that for now that we've rambled on. Let us know in the comments down below if you have a preference or if you think that there's something that we missed. Why is it that you like one or the other? And if you're looking forward to Marvel, let us know. But I'm sure we'll be back once we've played this more times to discuss even more thoughts about Death May Die and Zombicide. And maybe we'll get a real hardcore comparison in the future, but this was just a good initial impressions and thoughts.
I wonder if you can combine them at all.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to do that. Maybe that'll be a video.
That would be awesome.
Cthulhu Death May Zombicide.
Cthulhu Death May Die again.
Zombicide. Death May Zombies. Death May side.